Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 205 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on with you?
Man, what is happening with you? I'm good.
You're good. I'm good, which means the show should be good, right?
Yeah.
If we're both good, good plus good equals great?
Yes.
Or at least good.
Something like that.
Yeah, we'll see.
We've been recording for a while today.
We recorded a lot of episodes today. Speaking of that, right now we have a brand new TCAT episode out. It's on the 1984 murder of 20-year-old Angela Samoda. Very interesting case, solved many years later through a DNA match. We also have a brand new Patreon-only episode out that dropped on Saturday. It's on the Saulnier brothers.
Yeah.
One of which was part of the basis for the movie Dead Man Walking. And we also dive into some of the work of Sister Helen Prejean. To me, it's just a very fascinating story.
And we might even talk a little bit about Sean Penn's hair.
Maybe some Sean Penn hair talk.
Yeah.
All right, Gibbs, we have supporter shout outs to give. We had for Patreon, Chloe Rudell Holland.
Hey, Chloe.
Adrian DeRose.
Well, thank you, Adrian.
Fallon Cole.
What's going on, Fallon?
Oliver Rabette.
Hey, Rabette.
Joshua Brown.
What's going on, Joshua?
Andrew Barker.
Hey, Barker.
Carrie McCain.
Thank you, Carrie.
Deanna Morell.
What's up, Deanna?
Caitlin Griffith.
What's happening, Caitlin?
Robin Wild.
Well, stay wild.
Mary Jo Scamura.
Hey, Scamara.
Cayenne Kemet.
What's going on, Cayenne?
Maddie.
Hey, good old Maddie.
Morgan Pearson.
Well, thank you, Morgan.
Marie Cox Baker.
What's going on, Cox Baker?
Hannah Crisco.
Hey, Crisco.
Leah Madrigal.
Appreciate that, Leah.
Maisie Wilson.
What's going on, Maisie?
Allison Sampley.
Thank you, Allison.
Hannah Henson.
Hey, Hannah.
And last but not least, Allison Oakes.
Well, appreciate that, Allison.
And then Gibbs, if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Anna Lee.
Well, we love Anna Lee.
So huge shout outs for our new Patreon supporters, those that continue to support us month after month. It's amazing. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Sue Lewis.
Hey, Sue.
Judy Larson.
What's going on, Judy?
Laura Western.
Appreciate that, Laura.
And Leah Miller.
Hey, Leah.
So thanks to all of you as well. All right, Gibbs, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Man, I am.
We are headed to Australia to talk about a case that occurred in the late 70s, and it caused quite a stir in an otherwise quiet area of Collingwood, Victoria. A double homicide was discovered in 1977. On January 10th of that year, two young females, Susan Bartlett and Suzanne Armstrong, were found dead in their home after being repeatedly stabbed. The number of stab wounds between the victims was initially reported to be over 60, but later was corrected to be over 80 stab wounds.
Just to hear the initial amount of 60, you're in shock, you know?
And then they corrected and up it to 80.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, and I think it's that factor that has made this case one of Australia's most notorious cold cases, and it remains unsolved over 40 years later. Susan Bartlett, who went by Sue, and Suzanne Armstrong were housemates. Sue Bartlett was a 27-year-old teacher in the Collingwood area. Suzanne Armstrong was a 28-year-old stay-at-home mother. She was busy raising her 16-month-old son, Gregory Armstrong.
Full-time job right there.
Absolutely. I remember those days. Now, I wasn't a stay-at-home mother. I think you probably knew that.
I kind of figured that part out.
But I do remember when my kids were that age, and you know, they can just be a handful. They're getting into that area where they're explorers and you can't keep them in one place, and you're watching them all the time.
Oh man, I remember my daughter being around that age, maybe just slightly a little bit older, and I was stay-at-home dad at that time, doing real estate out of the house,
like a Mr. Mom type
Mr.
situation.
Mom, exactly. But oh my gosh, man, I thought, are you ever gonna like take a break? Are you ever gonna go down for a nap? Are you ever, not gonna ask me 20 questions? That. I just need a break. I just need a break so I can get some stuff done.
And that's why, if you ever hear somebody make the statement that, being a stay-at-home mom, that must be so easy. Okay. Turn around and run, because you might get smacked, because it is not easy.
I think if you're a stay-at-home parent, I think sometimes you are looking forward to the days that you get to get out of the house and have some adult time without your child attached to your hip.
But I will say, I'm sure it's unbelievably rewarding.
Oh,
I will say that.
But I really did enjoy that time in my life.
According to the Melbourne newspaper, The Age, Sue and Suzanne were residing on Easey Street in Collingwood. At the time, Collingwood was described as a safe area, a place where residents felt safe. Gibbs, how many times do we hear that in some of these older unsolved cases?
We hear it quite frequently.
We do, and I think people feel safe in a neighborhood until something horrific happens to kind of wipe away that veil of safety.
Yeah, stains that neighborhood for a while.
Because we've talked about it, right? This place was like Mayberry. I'm not saying Collingwood, I'm saying different cities that we've talked about, people left their doors unlocked. You could just walk right in.
Right.
Until there was a vicious murder. And it was from that point forward where everybody said, hey, we can't do this anymore. We have to keep our doors locked and we need to be safe.
Yeah, we never really start off with, it was a terrible neighborhood. It was actually expected that something bad was going to happen at some point in this house. We don't really ever say that, do we?
No, because I think if that was the case, we'd probably just leave it out.
Yeah.
Sue Bartlett and Suzanne Armstrong had an established friendship before they became housemates. The two grew up together. They were school friends from a rural town named Benalla. Due to their strong friendship, the two decided to rent a small house together. It was October of 1976 when Sue and Suzanne moved in together into the house at 147 Easey Street. They rented this small 2-bedroom house, which was perfect for the two friends because they each had their own bedroom. At the time they moved in, Sue and Suzanne were raising a small dog named Mashika.
Yeah. I read in one news article that it was a cross between a lab and a German Shepherd.
On January 12th, 1977, neighbors Ilona Stevens and Janet Powell found little Mashika wandering around the street. They decided to return the dog to its owners. But when they arrived at the home, neither Sue nor Suzanne answered the door. The neighbors brought Mashika back to their house with them after leaving a note for Sue and Suzanne at their front door, believing that they would see the message and come and retrieve their dog. But this didn't happen. These neighbors lived right next door, and they also noticed that 16-month-old Gregory had been crying frequently. And I think Gibbs, putting those two together, finding Mashika, not being able to get a hold of Sue and Suzanne, but hearing the baby crying, that raised their level of concern.
Yeah, certainly alarming.
The next day, sensing that something was wrong, Stevens and Powell visited the house again. They went around the house to check in on Sue and Suzanne, and to their horror, they were confronted with a bloody scene. Ilona reported that she was the first one to witness the horrible sight. At the time, it was noted in the press that she tried to remain calm in order to remove Gregory from his crib before she fled the house and called the authorities. But later she confirmed she never removed Greg because, in her words, he looked too fragile and ill to her, and she didn't want to harm him by picking him up.
Yeah, I guess he was really dehydrated, being alone in that house for so many days, not receiving fluids. You can probably see how that would be.
When police arrived at the scene, they didn't find any signs of forced entry. The lead investigator at the time noticed that the killer might have entered the house through the window in Sue Bartlett's bedroom. The bedroom window had been left open partway, and there were muddy footprints on the bed sheets indicating that someone stepped on the sheets as they entered the room.
Yeah, and I think after you see something like that, I think that's a logical conclusion to come to, that the murderer must have came through that window, stepped on the bed, and that's how he got into the house.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't stand or jump on their own beds with muddy shoes on.
No.
It's just not something that you do. As police moved along to the hallway, they found Sue Bartlett dead from stab wounds, and we've kind of touched on it. It would turn out to be a shocking number, 55 stab wounds. Her blood was spattered all over the walls in the front door hallway. The bloody scene in the hallway suggested to police that Sue had fought hard against the attacker, considering the amount of struggle from Sue. The police came out and they characterized the killer as having been strong, at least strong enough to restrain a woman. So I read this, Gibbs, and my first thought was, okay, it's a little bit of a sexist comment.
Well, sure.
By the police, but we are talking about 1977.
Yeah.
I think there are probably a number of women listening right now saying to themselves, well, hell, I could beat up both Ferg and Gibby. I'm stronger than them.
For sure, you.
And they would probably be right. I guess I take this comment to mean that the attacker had to have the strength to be able to restrain Sue while she was putting up one hell of a fight. So I think, does it scream man? I don't know if it screams it. Is it most likely? Yes. Sure. But is it based on strength? Not to me. It's based on the fact that most of these types of attacks are committed by men. There are plenty of women that have the strength to do something like this, but it does limit your pool somewhat because it had to be a person that was at least somewhat physically fit or, as strong as Sue. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but no doubt she did put up a heck of a fight. When you see the pictures of the hallway of that house and you see the bloodstained walls, she definitely did not go down easy. She was trying to get out that front door so she could get some help.
Yeah, it was a very, very vicious scene. Suzanne Armstrong was found in her bedroom. She was naked and her nightgown was pushed up to the bottom of her breasts, leaving her exposed from the waist down. It was later revealed that she had been stabbed 27 times. There was a large pool of congealed blood around her body, a lot of it around her head. And due to the fact that she was partially nude, investigators, I think immediately, suspected that this case was linked to sexual violence. Later, it would be confirmed that Suzanne was sexually assaulted post-mortem. During the investigation, officers collected semen found on Suzanne's body. Now, to me, Gibbs, this is critical. You know, we have done so many cases where there's essentially nothing found at the crime scene that would later produce a DNA sample.
Right.
Obviously, we're talking about 1977 here. DNA technology doesn't even exist. It's not even really in its infancy at this point when it comes to crime fighting. But just the mere fact that semen was collected, it's huge. And obviously, we'll talk about it as the years go on in this case. The authorities suspected that Sue Bartlett was stabbed to death, possibly after stumbling upon the murder of her friend. So we've already talked about one theory, Gibbs, which was that the killer gained access to the house through Sue's bedroom window.
Right.
Based on the muddy footprints. I think another theory emerged that the killer could have possibly entered through the front door and attacked Suzanne first before stabbing Sue to death. Suzanne's bedroom was located at the front of the house. And part of the theory is that the perpetrator saw Suzanne first and saw his opportunity to commit a sexual crime before being confronted by Sue. Possibly Sue heard her friend in a struggle and rushed to help her, only to be stabbed. Her blood was evident throughout the hallway and towards the front door, indicating that she was attempting to seek help up to her very last moments. And we've already mentioned it, Gibbs, but fortunately, Suzanne Armstrong's son, Gregory, was found completely unharmed at the scene. He had been left alone in that house, untouched for 3 days. He was hospitalized for dehydration and malnourishment, but he showed no significant signs of physical trauma.
Which is amazing, to be left alone for that period of time and, come out physically unscathed.
Yeah, it actually kind of shocks me because you always hear in, survival stories, the thought is that you can make it 3 days without water and 3 weeks without food, right? That's kind of the basic thinking of survival.
Yeah.
You hear it all the time, but to think that, an infant can go that long and make it, it is kind of amazing.
I did read in a story much later that because of Greg's age at the time, even emotionally, because he doesn't recall any of the events, he basically said, I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine with my life. Now, I'm sure that he has those moments that he obviously wished his mother was around, but he wasn't traumatized from the events that happened during that time.
In the bathroom, officers noticed that there were traces of blood still evident in the sink. So the thought there was, Gibbs, that the killer seemed to be rushing or simply just didn't care enough to wash the blood down the drain.
And during the research of this case, I found it interesting that back then they didn't really rope off the house like they do today. And that one of the officers actually went into that bathroom and washed his hands in that sink, basically contaminating some of that blood that they found in there.
Yeah, that's not good.
No.
That's not police work 101 for sure. Investigators at the scene also found a note left inside the home, and it was a strange note, Gibbs. The contents asked about the whereabouts of Suzanne Armstrong. The note was something along the lines of, I stopped to see you, you're not home, I'll come back later. So it's obviously a note that police would be very interested in.
Sure.
They want to know who the author of the note was.
And when did they stop by?
Yeah. And when did they leave it? According to Helen Thomas, author of the book Murder on Easey Street, the police were able to narrow down the victims' timelines. On the night of January 10th, Sue Bartlett's brother, Martin, and his girlfriend Vicky had visited Sue and Suzanne. They had dinner at the house before leaving around 9 or 9:30 p.m. And because of this information, authorities believe that Sue and Suzanne were murdered sometime after 9 or 9:30 p.m. on January 10th. It's theorized that the person who committed the murders was likely familiar with both women. The fact that there was a lack of forced entry would indicate that the murderer was someone known to at least one of the women, most likely Suzanne Armstrong. Something else that convinced police that the killer was known to the victims was that there were no reported screams or pleas for help by the women. Neighbors around the area didn't hear anything suspicious during the time of the murders.
Yeah, I think if you were being stabbed that many times, that's really brutal. I think you would scream fairly loud.
No, I do too. The question is, would neighbors hear it?
I think probably if the neighbors could hear a baby cry. But then again, if it's late at night and you're in a deep sleep, I mean, I know there's some people who can sleep through a tornado siren going off.
Yeah, I guess my thought is there's no doubt that there would have been screaming. I just don't know, what time this happened. Like you said, were the neighbors asleep? I kind of look at my own situation. I think I could scream as loud as I wanted to. And I don't think there's any neighbor that would hear me. And the houses here are very close together.
Yeah.
So I just don't know. But you go back to, the fact that they heard the baby crying. So, obviously there was some ability to hear what was going on in the house. It just, that might have been a different part of the day, different time of day.
That's true.
Gibbs, we've already talked about it, but one of the most notable characteristics of this case is the number of stab wounds. We said it, right? Between the two women, there were a total of 82 stab wounds. The excessive number of stab wounds indicates overkill, which is when a killer harms the victim to a greater extent than required to kill them.
This definitely was overkill.
There's no doubt. And I think this is something you've talked about quite a bit, right? What does that mean? What does it mean when you see this level of overkill in a murder?
Yeah. You have rage, passion sometimes.
Maybe a grudge, some type of personal vendetta.
Yeah.
But what do those all have in common?
Well, it means you have to have some type of relationship with these women.
Yeah, you have to know them in some way. It's kind of hard to, have that type of passion or rage or grudge or personal vendetta if you don't have some type of relationship with a person.
Yeah, because otherwise, why would you just not stop after the victim is dead? Why continue to go on and on?
Yeah, and I think most times the police view that as there's something else. There's something fueling that level of overkill. Now, it could be, and we've seen cases like this, that, a killer or an attacker just has a general hatred towards women or some specific group, whoever they're attacking. It's definitely possible. And we've done a number of cases where there's overkill and it turns out the person has no relationship with the victim at all. They didn't know them. They selected them randomly. At the time of the murders, Suzanne Armstrong was romantically involved with a man named Barry Woodard. It was revealed later that it was Barry who had placed the note inside the house. Barry told investigators that the last time he saw Suzanne was on January 9th, and they had made plans to meet the next day. But Suzanne didn't show up. So concerned, Barry called her multiple times, but she never answered. On January 12th, the day before the horrific discovery, Barry visited the Easey Street home. Barry told police that he entered the house through the back door, which he said was left unlocked and was slightly open. When he entered the home, Barry left his note on the kitchen table and said he left without checking to see if his girlfriend or her best friend was even in the house.
So strange to me to hear somebody say that.
Well, I think it is very strange. I think the police thought it was very strange, and it was enough of a reason for them to start to suspect Barry. Now, Barry insisted that he didn't see the bodies because he had only really been in the kitchen while he was in the house. And this explanation was consistent with the house plan. And after being interrogated by 8 different police officers, Barry was released without being charged.
But wouldn't you think you would hear Gregory crying? Wouldn't you think you would at least wander through the house a little bit? I would have.
Again, that's why it's strange. That's why the police thought it was strange. And I think most people that look at this case think something doesn't add up there because that doesn't seem logical. So for one thing, we know Gregory was in the house.
Yeah.
So was he not crying? Was he not even making a single noise that would have been heard? Because this house is completely quiet. My other thing is, did this guy not smell any odors? You got to think the bodies had been in the house for what? At least a few days.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what type of smells would have been emanating at that point, but there's just a lot of things that seem on the surface to be a little strange, no doubt.
All I know is if I'm going through that back door, not only am I calling out to Suzanne and Sue, I'm going to check the whole house out, man. I don't know. It really bugs me. I know we talked about it. It just really eats me up a little bit.
No, I get it. I'm right with you.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
An individual came forward to police and said that he had visited the house a couple of days before the discovery of the bodies. This man identified himself as someone who was at the time seeing Sue Bartlett. He told police he had called Sue's residence multiple times, but no one answered. So when he didn't get a response, the man said he thought he had the wrong number, and he started investigating. He reportedly entered the house through Sue's bedroom via the window. Then he proceeded to enter the living room to check to see if Sue had received his calls. And I guess Gibbs, he said after confirming that he indeed had the correct phone number, he left the way he came in.
So here we go. So now we know what the footprint on the bed is about. But again, how do you come into this house and not look around for your girlfriend or her roommate? And again, does he not hear Gregory cry? Does he not smell a dirty diaper-ish smell?
Or a dead body type smell? I think there's a couple of different things that could have been going on. You know, first of all, he climbed through the window, and then he checks the phone to make sure he's got the right phone number.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
And then he climbs back out the window. I mean, to me, this is just as bizarre as the other guy we talked about. Police interrogated this guy for an entire day. And, you know, just like Barry, he insisted that he didn't see the bodies because of the route that he took to the living room. And just like with Barry, this did align with the plan of the house. And when we say that, we just mean that, when you look at the floor plan, you could travel to the places that these people said they did and not see the bodies based on where the bodies were located. Also, a friend of this guy came forward to corroborate his story. The friend said he dropped this guy off at the house. He confirmed that the man did enter through Sue's bedroom window, only to leave the house the same way not long after he went in. So I guess Gibbs, this friend, drove the guy to the house, and then he waited for him in the car, and then they took off.
Maybe he went in the house, saw what not saying he saw, and said, we got to get out of here right now.
I don't know, but I have never seen a case like this where multiple people are murdered inside a house. They're in there for days, and more than one person enters the house, says they know these people, and somehow do not check the house for their safety.
Yeah.
I've just never heard of it. I don't even know if I'm sure we've covered a case where it's happened one time, right, but to have it happen twice in the span of just a few days, it's very odd.
And it's not like it's a big house. So, I mean, I understand the hallway was long and dark, but still, I'm just saying if I asked 10 people if you would go into this house looking for your girlfriend, are you telling me you wouldn't search the whole house for them? I think most would.
I think most would. When you're talking about this second guy, he's not even sure he's got the right phone number.
Yeah.
I mean, how long's this relationship been going on?
Right.
I mean, all of this is just somewhat odd to me. There's no doubt. But considering the lack of evidence they had against this guy, the authorities released him without charging him. But again, I'll go back. I have to ask this question, Gibbs. What are the odds that two different men enter a house with two women dead inside and a baby still alive, and they don't notice a thing? I wouldn't put a large wager on that. I don't know what the odds are, but I'm not putting much money on it. I can tell you that. Now, we've talked about the police theory that the killer was someone known to the two women. Obviously, this is not a certainty. The neighbors, Alona Stevens and Janet Powell, who discovered the victims, testified that the back door through which they entered was already open. Additionally, it was reported that Sue and Suzanne's front door was accessible because it was left unlocked. So I think when you factor in some of these things, Gibbs, you definitely have to broaden your list of suspects.
Sure.
I'm not letting go of these two other guys because I still think that's strange as all get out, but
Me too.
Officers interviewed neighbors. They went house to house. An older woman named Gladys Coventry, who was living next door to Sue Bartlett and Suzanne Armstrong, reported that she saw a man exiting the alleyway near the house. She told officers that this man she saw was holding a knife. But at the time, the woman had dismissed the incident, believing that one of the women must have known this man. The thing I found very strange, Gibbs, is that police didn't take an official statement from Gladys. And again, when we're talking about good police work,
right?
Okay, don't wash your hands in the sink.
Yeah.
At a crime scene where blood is in the sink. And let's get some official statements from these people that say they saw a man holding a knife.
Get it on paper.
I think it's important. Because when authorities returned to Gladys a few days later, she refused to cooperate with them because she felt as though she had been disrespected by police in their initial encounter.
Well, you know what? If you're going to be rude and disrespectful for me, why should I help you at this point?
Yeah, and she may have taken it as them being dismissive too.
Yeah.
I think that's a word that could be very fitting here because, you've got a person that says, hey, I saw something.
Yeah.
and you're acting like you're not going to take it seriously if you're not asking for an official statement. Maybe they kind of dismissed her thinking, oh, she didn't see anything.
She's an older lady. What did she actually see?
Well, then she's going to say phooey on you.
Yeah.
Another neighbor claimed that around 2:30 a.m. on the day of the murder, he heard the slamming sound of a front door, followed by what he thought were 2 slams of car doors, and then he heard a car drive off. But here again, authorities didn't really follow up on this report. Some people have theorized that it's because they were convinced that one person committed the crime, and so therefore this didn't fit their narrative.
But it works if you think about it. You could have 2 people do this crime a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that feel as though the police really jacked this up, and we'll talk about it more as we go through. I'm not really sure why they would have been so stuck on a one attacker narrative, but like you said, very possible that there were multiple people that committed these murders. On January 17th, investigators found a knife at a nearby train station known as Victoria Park Station. This is located just a few blocks from 147 Easey Street. And I think based on this discovery, police theorized that the killer fled the area by train. Although there was evidence of dried blood on the knife, the technology during that time was not advanced enough to confirm whether or not the knife was the murder weapon. Now, I go back to this theory, Gibbs, that the killer fled by train.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's not possible. What I am saying is whoever this person or persons were that committed this crime, they had to have been covered in blood.
Yeah, such a brutal murder. Blood spatter everywhere inside that hallway.
Unless they found a way to change clothes or something like that, I don't know how anyone is getting on a train full of passengers in that condition. In late January, police officers discovered a knife, a shirt, and shoes covered in dried blood. These items were found in a car in Launceston, Tasmania, but registered in Victoria. On February 4th, the bloody items were examined in hopes that they would be able to help police to narrow in on the killer. But similarly to the knife at Victoria Park Station, no significant results were determined from the items, essentially because the forensic technology was just so limited back then.
Really was.
There was just so little that they could actually do.
You could get some fingerprints and maybe match the blood type to somebody else, but that's about it.
On January 21st, 1977, a journalist named Tess Lawrence published an article that described her visit to the crime scene. In her article, she depicted the state of the house as the family members of Sue and Suzanne were packing up their stuff, including their record collection. After publishing the article containing details of the house, Tess received a call from a man. The man pointed out to Tess that despite her mentioning the records on the shelf, she had neglected to talk about a particular record, which was placed in the record player. Not only was the information provided by the man accurate, but it was information that had not yet been released to the public by the press or the police. Tess was alarmed, and she alerted the police and requested that they trace the phone call. However, almost 40 years after publishing that article, Tess wrote a follow-up piece in 2017, revealing that at the time, the police, to her knowledge, did not investigate the phone call any further.
Which again is alarming because it could have led to something. Why not investigate it?
Yeah, because, this is what you and I are always talking about with Unsolved, right? Police hold things back.
Right.
Now you have information provided that would be difficult for most people to know, where you have to ask the question, how does this man know about the record on the record player? It's not in the newspapers. Police haven't disclosed that information. So could it be that this person was in the house? Could it be that this person was a killer? Why would you not want to look into that?
Yeah.
According to Helen Thomas, the author of Murder on Easey Street, police had a list of about 130 possible suspects with 8 main viable suspects. But Gibbs, they couldn't find sufficient evidence to charge any of the suspects. This case went cold. Then in 1996, investigators decided to take a fresh look at the case. With the advancement of technology, authorities hoped that DNA testing would provide answers. The DNA sample used came from the semen that was found on Suzanne Armstrong's body. This was compared to the DNA of the central suspects that had been developed over the years, but no positive match was found. Officers even attempted to see if the results would match anyone within the Australian criminal database, but they couldn't find a match either. In 2003, another suspect emerged as the potential perpetrator. The suspect was a former newspaper journalist, but police have never released his identity. This journalist was previously connected to the disappearance of another woman named Julianne Garcia Saleh, which occurred on July 1st, 1975. He was the last known person to have seen this woman. It just so happens that the journalist was next door to Sue and Suzanne's home, visiting friends around the time of the crime. So I think Gibbs, with this guy having some sort of connection in 2 separate incidents involving crimes against women, the police found this former newspaper journalist to be a person of interest. The friend who was with the journalist on the night of Sue and Suzanne's murder provided a statement detailing that they both went to sleep around 2 a.m. But the friend did say early that morning at approximately 8 a.m., the journalist was dressed and left in a hurry to go to work. But Gibbs, to me, there's just not a whole lot here other than the fact that, this guy was next door. I mean, technically he could have had the opportunity.
Yeah. It's a lead, I guess.
Yeah. With his proximity, but there was no physical evidence to put this guy inside 147 Easey Street, and no charges have ever been filed against the journalist.
But in a cold case, you're going to get excited about any little bit of new lead that comes in.
Absolutely. And especially in a case this old. I mean, I think you have to grasp at some straws, right? Because it could be that one straw that breaks the case wide open. Internet sleuths often bring up another man as possibly being involved in the murders. This man was a former police officer who had some sort of relationship, allegedly, with Suzanne Armstrong, although the details of that relationship are unclear. The man did have a history of sexual harassment and alcohol abuse, which ultimately resulted in him being let go from the police force. At the time of the murders, this former police officer was working near Easey Street. According to web sleuths, this man has provided conflicting statements of his whereabouts on the day of the murders. But Gibbs, this is coming from, people on the internet. We have no idea if police have looked into this guy, if he's even on their radar. We don't really know.
Yeah. And if they are, maybe they're not ready to say anything about it. Maybe it's just one of those things that they're keeping close to the vest.
On January 15th, 2017, Suzanne Armstrong's sister, Gail Tilton, exposed the poor quality of the investigation through the press. She said that the police did not take the initiative to interview the victims' family members. Instead, they had to book an appointment with the police themselves. So again, I think Gibbs here, another dig at the police, right? And you see a lot of this as it relates to this case. I do think it's somewhat odd that she waited 40 years to, kind of shed light on this fact. It's horrible if that's what happened, because to me, it would be another sign that the investigation didn't go in the way that it should have.
Yeah, it should be like investigation 101.
Right. Family members sent her out, right? Yeah. I mean, we see that all the time. And I think it's this perceived incompetence of the Victoria police back at that time that leads people to think that's why there haven't been any solid leads, right? Because the police didn't do things the way that they should have. We've talked about a number of things that people point to and say, okay, the police could have followed up on this. They could have followed up on that. One of those was the phone call that we talked about that was made to journalist Tess Lawrence. Now, there's no way for us to know if police did some things behind the scenes. Maybe they did and didn't make it public, but I can tell you that there's a lot of chatter surrounding this case that involves the thought that police just didn't follow up on things. They dismissed tips that were brought forward by neighbors, and all that has made solving this case very difficult. In late January 2017, police announced a reward of $1 million for anyone willing to provide information about the case.
It's a lot of money, man.
That is one of the highest rewards I think you and I have ever seen.
It's like $800,000 in U.S. money, but still, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm not going to split hairs over 800,000, $1 million. That's still quite a bit of money.
That's a lot of jack.
It's the kind of money that would make someone turn on someone else. I can tell you that right now.
Oh,
you and I talk about rewards being offered of 1,000,
right?
5,000, 10,000. That might not be enough in probably most cases to make somebody turn on a friend, or a loved one. You're going to throw $1 million at someone, people turn pretty quickly.
Well, I think it would take about $1 million for you to turn on me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably turning on you. If, they offer me, 5 at 5 at Wendy's,
or Snickers Blizzard.
Ooh, a Snickers Blizzard. You're done.
I'm done for. But that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
and it's a very, very high reward. It's been over 40 years since the murders took place. A lot of suspects or persons of interest that police have developed over the years, they passed away. Again, something we see in a lot of older cold cases. Out of the 130 suspects, a third of them are deceased as of 2020, but police have assured the public that whether the perpetrator is alive or dead, DNA testing can be performed on family members to confirm the conviction. And that's something that is happening all the time, right? Genetic genealogy, it is solving a ton of cold cases.
So there's definitely hope out there.
Yeah, there's always hope. Now, will it be true justice if they identify the killer and that killer is dead and live their life as a free person for 40 plus years before they died? It's still a win to finally give the families the name or names of whoever took the lives of their family members.
Yeah. I think you always want to know.
Yeah, you always want to know, and you always want to, identify a killer. I guess my question is it somewhat sad that it would take 45, 50 years, and by the time it's done, that killer has passed away and they got away with it for all those years?
Yeah, we've seen that.
But you'd rather have them identified than never.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd want to make sure their family knew what kind of guy that was.
Yeah, absolutely. The murders committed at 147 Easey Street in Collingwood shook the entire nation. The murders greatly impacted the families, especially Suzanne's son, Gregory. After the death of his mother, Gregory was adopted by his aunt, Gail Tilton. Investigators and family members of the victims, they've not lost hope, Gibbs, in solving this case. Homicide detective Michael Hugh stated that the killer, as of now, would likely be 60, 70 years old. But he said the advancements in technology will catch up with him. So no doubt, Gibbs, 2 horrific murders. I mean, just the descriptions of the crime scene alone and the number of stab wounds. I mean, that really stands out to me.
Horrific, brutal, yeah. As they mentioned back then, overkill.
Yeah, definite overkill. But I think the one thing that this case really has going for it is the DNA. And I don't know how much genetic genealogy, if any, they've done. We know that the killer is not in any of the databases, or they would have already caught him.
Right.
But is someone in their family tree in a database, or, something like that? And that's going to lead us to the ultimate killer. That's what we're seeing so often now. And it amazes me every time. But that's it for the case of the unsolved Easey Street murders. Gibbs, we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hello, gentlemen. This is Scott. I'm calling to you from Irwin, Tennessee. Small town nestled in the Appalachian Mountains. And just got finished listening to the latest episode on Unsolved Arkansas. And Mr. Gibson, I just wanted to tell you, just wanted to make sure that you get your money out of Mike. He bet you that you wouldn't know the mascot down there, and you guessed it, Razorback. Just make sure you get that money, maybe upgrade your chair a little bit. Got a case for you, recommendation, happened in Knoxville, Tennessee, not too far from where I am. And can't remember the man's name, but he was known as the Zoo Man, the serial killer that got away with murder. Probably worked really well on TCAT or Unsolved. And once you start looking into it, I think you're going to understand it'd be a really good case for you guys to check out and present on your show. Great job. Keep it up. Keep your own time ticking. See you later.
All right. Love Knoxville, one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you my grandpa had season tickets to volunteer football?
Oh, really? To the Vols?
Yeah, we used to go.
Good old Rocky Top.
I didn't go all the time because I lived in Ohio, but whenever I would go down to see him during football season, he would take me.
The stadium sits right there on that water.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Because they were really good back then when he had the tickets.
Peyton Manning?
No, this was probably even before that.
Okay.
I don't remember if he had the tickets still when Peyton was there. And I never saw Peyton, so I doubt it. But we'll definitely have to check out that case. Now, as far as the bet, you ultimately got it right, but on the second try.
I got it right. It's all that matters.
I guess I didn't specify how many tries you get.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Mike. Hi, Mr. Gibby. It's Vanessa Alicea in Lockhart, Texas, calling again. I called back a few weeks ago. I'm officially all caught up until tomorrow, because I know you guys are releasing your new episode tomorrow, but I'm officially all caught up. I can't believe it only took me like a month and a half. So I want to tell you guys I love you guys. And Mr. Gibby, now that you passed with the COVID, I'm glad that you're doing better. I know when it's like both my sisters caught COVID, and thank God they survived. And it was touch and go for one of my sisters for a while. So my heart went out to you when I heard, even though by that time you had already passed and started getting better. But I just wanted you to know that even though you're still in my thoughts, because I know it can still be iffy with things. So anyway, enough rambling on. I love you guys both, and I'm definitely Team Gibby. So I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
I am no longer licking doorknobs, so hopefully I'll stay healthy.
Yeah. I always told you that was a bad practice.
I thought it was kind of funny, but
I never understood the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
But, hey.
Live and learn.
Live and learn, to each his own.
Hey there. It's Andrea in Atlanta. How y'all doing? I just am listening to all the recently released True Crime All the Time Unsolved. And, of course, I'm not very far into it, and Gibby kept on asking people to call in and leave a voice message. So I just finished my 3 miles, and I listened to 2 podcasts while I was doing that, your recent released ones. Really enjoy it so much. In fact, sometimes I'm laughing so hard I have to stop because I can't walk. So anyway, a little late, 3 years late, but I am finally leaving you a voicemail. Really enjoy your podcast and stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Love it. Love it. We always say, right? Better late than never.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter when you find us, as long as you find us.
That's a good pace. 2 T-Cats per 3 miles.
That's a Gibby pace right there.
That is.
Really am suddenly, but for one sweet moment I'm home. Sorry, that was weird. Hi, Fergie and Gibby. You're a super lame super fan from Indianapolis. I realized you never had a sing-song voicemail, so I had to change that. I trust that you will do your research into the song and why it relates. Expect sing-song voicemails in the future. I'm not giving you any details. I'm sure you'll figure it out. And keep up the good work. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking. With love, Natalie from Indianapolis.
All right. Love, Natalie. Now I had to cut it down. There was a lot of singing.
Oh, okay.
So I had to cut it down to like the end part.
Yeah.
The problem is I couldn't figure out the song from just the end part. I should have started the research before I edited the voicemail down.
I gotcha.
So I have no idea what the song is, but I did try.
So she needs to resend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't get it. I'd like to know what it is though.
I know you did.
Just send me an email.
Just tell you up front.
Yeah. All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.